Assalamu alaikum everyone. Hope you're doing fine. Today we are discussing the uh, module fifth, which is uh, capturing and codification of knowledge. Today's topic is the third part in the series, which is methods and challenges of codification of explicit knowledge. As we could recall, we started with the journal advantages and challenges and ways to record, capture, and codify knowledge journally. Then we shifted our debate and focused on the codification and capturing of the basic knowledge, which is uh, human embedded knowledge. And we looked at individual as well as organizational ways to capture the basic knowledge. In today's session, we will be focusing on the codification of the explicit knowledge. Once tacit to tacit interactions do happen in the organization, uh, the consensus and collaboration process results in identification of shared knowledge and definitely is shaping in a form which is easy to understand, which is describable, and also in terms of uh, files and data, and in terms of shape that could be sent from one place to another. This process, this knowledge codification, therefore, is the process of transferring the tacit knowledge now unanimously agreed upon, or most probably people believe is good, is to into a shape that is readable, understandable, and transferable. So we're looking at the explicit knowledge codification methods, processes, and also the challenges facing this process. So we're converting knowledge into a tangible, explicit form, which is mostly in the form of documents, files. And idea is once it is available in this form, it is easily transferable and becomes a useful source of sharing knowledge across the organization. Once we're transferring basic knowledge into explicit form, there are a lot of challenges in this process that relates to the codification in terms of quality. You want to present this knowledge, which is a true reflection of what people believe in, that is the accuracy of the knowledge, also into a shape that people could understand, and in a shape that is people be able to access it from their remote places. And throughout the whole process, in the cycles of the models, focus on the debate of keeping this knowledge up to date that is useful in terms of the current scenarios. So the currencies is a challenge, and also is coming from the right experts, authentic sources that is ensuring its credibility. So the codification process we keep in mind into the challenges and also in terms of the performance parameters. These are KPIs, key performance indicators as far as codification process is concerned. Any useful codification mechanism should adhere to these values, which is accuracy, understandability, accessibility, currency, and credibility. Uh, by be codifying knowledge, because we want to present this into a certain shape which people could understand. What the knower knows perhaps is vague, generally in their mind. They're not sure what exactly it might be in terms of its futuristic shape. So the codification process writes the right language, also the right ways, present it to us into a shape where people could understand. Also, idea is explicit knowledge is something that is concrete, tangible, and is could easily be managed and placed into not only the basis, the storage, but is to be transferred wherever it is possible and updated wherever it is necessary. Is to be properly maintained into the right resources. Finally, idea is wherever possible, when the knowledge stocks rises, we want to improve this knowledge for the sake of the whole organization, or at least the recipients. There are multiple codification techniques that are available. Some are very well established and are used in multiple domains, not only in knowledge management but elsewhere, but are techniques which might help us to classify and to present knowledge in the right shape, right form, so that it is understandable and has specific meaning so that people be able to relate to these. So we have four techniques, codification techniques, which includes cognitive maps, same trees, taxonomies, especially in the context of knowledge taxonomies. Finally, we have the task analysis. It's generally a HR technique that a useful technique will be able to classify key aspects of any task formed within the organization. Firstly, we look at cognitive maps. As the name cognition suggests, this is the use of human mind ability, mental ability to classify things and be able to make sense about things around human beings, especially whatsoever is available across and close by to the human mind in terms of its environment. So it is a process of sense making. It allows the uh, knower to develop concepts, models, and construction of things in terms of the characteristics, also in terms of the way the things can be differentiated from others. There is a process of constant conceptualization. The cognitive maps, therefore, are classified as mental model or mental model making. So it is the representation of the world around us. Once a person looks at something, he creates a model about things, which helps him or her to understand what is uh, the item is, the process is, or the relationship between things. Cognitive maps are thoroughly used across different fields. It is the process of conceptualization of things. We are living in a world of models. Most of the models tends to present themselves into this type of framework. This is an example of a concept map. We developing and creating a sense about the two types of knowledge, explicit and tacit, that we have been actively involved with it. A knowledge worker, therefore, is constantly looking at not only tacit knowledge but also explicit knowledge. Rather, he is been able to transfer the tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge. So, if you look at tacit knowledge, we basically uh, is creating sense through experience and insights, and therefore, a knowledge worker through his experience, practice, is been able to recreate or create the sense about things. Once it is codified, it becomes explicit knowledge, and therefore It is converted into a proper shape, has a certain language, and is placed somewhere. So a knowledge worker accesses the explicit knowledge from the source, but also shares the tacit knowledge, and therefore is presented to various recipients, to practitioners, and therefore is available for understanding. So a concept map or cognitive map is a useful source. We'll be able to understand different items, their associations, and also their antecedents or the consequences or their inflows or the outflows. There are multiple ways to look at cognitive maps. Now, if you look at this complex cognitive map, which is at times very simple, but at times it's very complex in nature. This cognitive map help us to link knowledge management not only to financial performance but also having satisfied employees. So the one that leads to 13, but also the one that leads to eventually to 12, good financial performance. Whereas all other items, including second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, till the 10th, are helping, supporting, or contributing aspects. If you look at 13, we need to have satisfied employees. They this cognitive map helps us understand how we could able to achieve it through knowledge management. You see, having capable and knowledgeable staff contributes towards that. High level of staff morale and motivation also contributes towards that. Of course, staff performance management also contributes to this. We also could enable this whole process to target customers' higher level of customer satisfaction. Um, this then is requirement because there is some competition outside the organization. Right number of staff, having the favorable customer mix, having a good location of the branch, but also having uh, highly sophisticated and balanced infrastructure, and then high achievement in customer satisfaction, but also leads to good financial. So eventually, we could find the root or the source of having highly capable and knowledgeable staff uh, could contribute towards good financial performance. So once we're looking at how knowledgeable staff could lead to high performance in terms of financial performance, this cognitive map guides us in many ways and could help us to understand the various antecedents, sources, but also various other environmental factors. So the cognitive map helps us to recognize things and develop concepts and corresponding relationships to concepts. Is a source of linking right knowledge to other knowledge elements and be able to uh, understand different relationships. A very famous technique that we're looking at today is also the decision tree. Most probably, it is a technique used in decision making, which is looking at uh, alternatives, options, and the dynamics related to each option. Finally, that leads to certain outcomes. Usually, it is in the form of flow charts and flow diagrams and the systematic, layered, hierarchical in nature in many ways. And it provides nodes with alternative paths, eventually to the final outcomes. If you look at this decision tree, we're looking at two options available to organizations in terms of its products and helps organization to understand the uh, options that are available and what are the consequences that are related to each options. So, linking back and forth, a decision maker could be able to identify which options may be suitable. And if he could be able to add more complexity to it, he could be able to add financial outcomes associated with these. At times, we could add probabilities and chance theory to this and be able to look at the possible occurrence of events and the possible outcomes related to that. Now, a organization could choose between various options in terms of its growth options. You see, the organization could go for consolidation, that is to manage the current products well, or maybe able to launch a new product. So these are two options that are available. Once consolidating, the organization could repurpose the product, reorient its purpose or target market, or be able to strengthen the current features of the product. So the product could go with same features, it may be enhanced, but the same product is being used. So whereas a new product, once it is taken up, it requires the rapid development of the new product features and services, and could also be fitted into the overhauling in complete process of product development, may result in good, moderate, or poor outcomes in all cases. So the consequences are also linked and the corresponding processes are linked in different options, alternatives. And therefore, it helps us to understand not only different uh, options, but also their consequences or also their antecedents, thinking items that are there. It helps us to map things in a way and be able to understand the processes. Generally, this technique of decision tree helps us to understand the processes and the related outcomes. Most probably, the automation and the information systems do use this technique in which the consequences are listed, whether based on actions of people, in which you see in this flow diagram, there are yes and no possibilities. So, uh, once an email is received, especially in terms of an complaint, how it is to be handled, eventually it generates a certain response to a customer or an employee. The whole process is uh, mapped through a yes no tree. Tree could have multiple options. A tree could also follow this yes no tree options that are there. Tree diagram. Tree diagram could also vary in terms of their outcomes, also in terms of the list of options that are there. Let's jump into the another interesting area of categorizing or codification of knowledge. Very famous. It is called the knowledge taxonomies. Taxonomies are universal ways through which we be able to categorize things based on evidence and based on um options available to us in terms of understanding things. We then be able to create major categories and subcategories about things. In fact, these are one of the major source of understanding about things. And we'll be doing that throughout the history of mankind. We'll be able to use classification, sub-classifications of concepts, which are initial items are viewed as building blocks of knowledge and expertise. And key concepts are identified, and then these are basically subdivided into other elements, most probably presented through hierarchical structure. The higher the concept is, at the top, it is more general in nature. And once we subdivide these, they tend to become more specific and uh, have specific meanings. So the knowledge taxonomies are classification techniques. We identify, define, and then we become a useful source of compared things as well. One of the basic strengths of knowledge taxonomies is to compare objects, compare things, especially in terms of the differences in their properties, and behavior, and also the association of different things. Then eventually we'll be able to classify and group elements based on their similarities or based on their differences. So knowledge taxonomies are widely used. For example, once we are presenting the classification of plants or animals or the birds, we then be using the knowledge taxonomy. At the greatest, highest level, we have the plants. Plants are in general nature, all types of plants may include this. We then subclassify these into house plants, landscaping, and native wild plants. Of course, house plants we have three options of foliage, flowering, and cacti. Whereas in the landscaping plants we have trees and ground covers. And then in trees we have the deciduous and evergreen. And then we have the native wild plants as one of the other categories. So the category and subcategory and grouping and subgroupings are based on similarities, also in terms of common characteristics that are prevalent in each category. So the taxonomy is a method of classifying things. It is a essentially helps us to sort things and therefore is a sorting technique as well. And we be able to then write it in terms of these cards, manual cards, or most probably use the software, the systems that helps us to cluster things. We call it the cluster analysis, whereas the information and data is classified and presented into two categories. So the knowledge taxonomies could be done manually, but also done with the help of the systems. When creating a knowledge taxonomy of the organization, it is important that if you could add source as well, that the knower if is attached to the knowledge taxonomies, then it also adds a usefulness to it. We not only be able to classify knowledge, but also to relate to knowledge experts. So knowledge taxonomies in some organization could itself be classified as a knowledge management system because not only it helps us to identify objects, but also to be able to relate to knowledge experts simultaneously. So it creates a database of knowers alongside the knowledge sources. In many cases, it is a useful technique which helps us to provide information about the information. We call it the metadata or the uh, also called the uh, big data, the source of the classification source of information or data that is available. So it helps us to find major categories, but also is able to find major linkages between data. So most likely it is used in multiple industries regarding product classifications, but also in terms of any sorts of knowledge related to services world as well, where we able to identify things and also know about major source of data that is arising from different knowledge experts. So we are able to identify knowledge, but also in terms of the knowledge owners, called them the content owners. The content and the content owners both are listed. Major categories of knowledge helps us to understand the concepts, the elements in the data, and then be able to be utilized at multiple sources. So multiple use of data is possible through this, or the knowledge is utilized at multiple places. Uh, Once in the business world, it helps us to understand different aspects of the industry, sub aspects, and also the relationships of different things with those sub concepts. So it's a very useful technique, very popular technique in the organization.